In 1908, a Scottish barrister called Glencairn Stuart Ogilvy inherited the village of Thorpeness on the Suffolk coast. Originally a small fishing hamlet, Ogilvy decided to carry out an extraordinary experiment to transform Thorpeness into a fantasy holiday destination. His vision was to create a place of dreams with whimsical architecture, fairy tale features and unique elements I'll be exploring later. Here, people could enjoy a traditional English holiday in surroundings that would stimulate the adults and fire the imagination of the children.
Ogilvy had holiday homes built in the Jacobean and Tudor revival styles, and they were all furnished with everything a holidaymaker would require for the perfect wholesome break. Tennis courts, a golf club, a church and even a pub were all centred around the boating lake.
Today the Ogilvys still have a strong presence in the village, and Glencairn's great-grandson, the current Glen Ogilvy, is a font of knowledge about this enchanting place.
His idea was to have a village where there was something for everybody. And he's famously quoted as having said, if children are happy, parents have a holiday. And I think that's as true today as it was back in 1910. It certainly was with our children, and indeed with our grandchildren now.
At the heart of the village, the Mere is an enormous boating lake covering over 60 acres. But this is not a natural lake, it's completely man-made and was designed by the creative Ogilvy to be full of make-believe features inspired by Charles Dickens and a friend of the family, J.M. Barrie of Peter Pan fame.
The construction of the lake started in 1911 and was completed 2 years later in 1913. It was dug out all by hand by local men, some of them local fishermen when they couldn't get off to sea. But it's nowhere more than 3 feet deep, so it's safe for children, although we've had hundreds of wet, muddy children, including me, my children, my grandchildren.
In August 1912, the very first regatta took place on the Mere and continues to this day as an annual tradition in the same way that many of the families who come here for their holidays have been doing so for generations.
But there's one particular tourist attraction in the village that I've come to take a closer look at today, and you can't miss it. You can spot it a mile off.
Seemingly floating over the rest of Thorpeness, one can see what appears to be a cottage lodged in the trees. But all is not quite as it seems.
Back in 1923, Ogilvy built a steel water tower to provide a basic water supply for Thorpeness village. The result was, well, a great big blot on the landscape, something horrible on the horizon that you could literally see for miles away. And he didn't know what to do with it, but there was a solution. A friend of his, Mrs. Mason, actually said, if you turn it into a house, I will live in it. And that's exactly what happened. There is the end result.
With the help from an architect, Ogilvy carried out an ingenious disguise. The tank was clad in wood and even fitted with windows to make it look like a small house. And the supporting steel structure was boarded in to provide unique living accommodation below the tank.
It really is the house in the clouds. Hi, are you Sylvia?
Yes, I am.
Oh, pleased
Hello.
to meet you.
Hello, Paul. Do come in.
Thank you.
The Ogilvy family sold the property to Sylvia Lecombert, and today it's a private residence, and as a special treat, I've been invited in to have a look around.
It's nice and warm.
It is nice and warm. And the kitchen's...
So this is the first room we come to, really, which makes sense, doesn't it? The kitchen and the dining room, because let's face it, you wouldn't want the kitchen on the top floor carrying all your shopping upstairs, would you?
No.
So Mrs. Mason was the first person to live here.
She was.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
She moved in 1923, and I think it was 39, might have been 40 when she moved out. The war caused it, yeah.
Yeah, and when did you move in?
77.
And you've had lots of happy years here?
We certainly have.
Can I have a guided tour? Can we start climbing some stairs?
Please go ahead.
OK, I'll follow you.
OK.
The house in the cloud's first incumbent, Mrs. Mason, was an interesting character. A published children's author, Mrs. Mason lived here with her 4 children.
Coming, Paul, to the drawing room here. And
This is a nice room. It's very, very arty and bohemian. First impressions, anyway.
this is some of Mrs. Mason's work. There is the House in the Clouds poem, #1.
The fairies really own the house, or so the children say. Do you think this is a real sort of family house where lots of children can have fun in and play?
Oh,
hide and
yes.
seek?
Oh, it is like magic to children. It's quite amazing how it has that effect.
Well, this was obviously built for Mrs. Mason, you know, designed for her to live in. That's why it has that fairy tale quality.
Mr. Ogilvy, when he built it for her, and he called her his Lady of Stairs and Starlight. Now, isn't that lovely?
Yeah. And there's plenty of stairs here, I would imagine.
And Starlight.
Was it always called the House in the Clouds?
Oh, no. It was the intention to be called the Gazebo. But she said that was a hideous name. She said, this is my house in the clouds.
It's a much better title, isn't it? Let's face it.
Fits it perfectly.
Well, this is the first floor explored. Can we go higher?
Yeah. Right, you got your walking boots on.
There are 5 bedrooms in the house, all leading off the main staircase, but it's what's above them that I'm interested in.
Here we are. I always run up these stairs.
Oh, I love this. Absolutely love this. So, are we now standing inside what would have been the water tank?
We are. 50,000 gallons of water when I moved in.
That's a lot of water.
Yes.
You wouldn't want a leak, would you?
It wouldn't, but it was very, very solidly built. It was in 4-foot steel panels, bolted together, but it didn't stop Hitler from getting at it.
It was during World War II that disaster struck. In June 1944, Germany launched its latest weapon against Britain, the V-1 flying bomb, which delivered a ton of high explosive each time one hurtled to the ground. Anti-aircraft guns were redeployed to East Anglia to intercept them.
Enemy aircraft over the channel.
One was sighted over Thorpeness by the Royal Artillery, and the anti-aircraft gun fired. It missed the bomb and hit the water tower.
The shell entered the house on this southeast corner and punctured the tank. It went
missed its
in one
target,
side,
but got
out
the
the other
tower.
side. Yes.
Presumably a big flood. Was somebody living below at the time?
Oh, yes. There were 3 Miss Humphreys living in the house. One of the Miss Humphreys was terribly sick, and the other 2 Miss Humphreys had to get her down and out. Anyway, the ladies actually did get their sister down.
And out of the house?
And
safely?
out of the house safely.
Happy ending.
Thank goodness.
So how did they get the tank out? Did they have to chop it up in bits up here?
Oh,
Sort of
no.
lower it
I
down?
mean, it had been very, very well maintained. And so we unbolted it. We
Yeah.
took them down on the pulley.
I tell you something, that's some height. You've got to have a head for heights
Yes.
up here, haven't you?
Yeah, yes.
Making me feel a bit dizzy looking down there.
Especially when it moves.
Yeah, I can feel it wobbling now. And of course you can hear the wind, can't you? I mean, it just really does give this building a battering.
Yeah.
So what's it like in a thunderstorm?
Oh, it's magic.
Is it?
It's electrifying. I mean,
I
quite
bet it is.
literally. Yes. I mean, you see it out to sea, and sometimes it's not even raining. It's just a whole body of light comes around you. It is wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, for
It's a
showing
great
me around
pleasure.
your house.
Great pleasure.
It's not just a house in the clouds. I think it's a house of dreams as well.
House of dreams and fun. Yes.